On this edition of the Ohio State Football Report, we have a double dose of good news on the recruiting side as that begins to really ramp up for the Buckeyes, and the formal announcements of the coaching staff officially from the team of changes that have happened post-national championship win for the Buckeyes. The next goal here is 10,000 subscribers on our Buckeyes YouTube channel. We will have NFL Combine coverage for you as well. A lot of different Ohio State players will have their press conferences for you, takeaways from it. Hit that sub button if you haven't already, youtube.com/GoBucks. Let's begin with the good recruiting news here, or at least the first part of the good recruiting news. Jackson Cantwell, the number 1 ranked player in the 2026 recruiting class, is going to visit Ohio State in March. He's got some, he tweeted this out on Wednesday, late Wednesday night actually. Upcoming visits for Cantwell: Miami Hurricanes in March, then Ohio State football, then Michigan. So he's got Florida, Ohio, Michigan all in a row, and then official visits are coming down the pipeline as well. Cantwell is the number 1 ranked recruit in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. He is out of the state of Missouri. He is an offensive tackle. We'll see if that changes. Obviously, these things ebb and flow, and sometimes they change and they drop from 1 to 3, and 5 goes to 2, and stuff like that. But Cantwell is a very clear target for the Buckeyes, and he's got a top 6 that's kind of spread out. He's got an SEC program in Georgia. He's got the Miami Hurricanes. He's got Michigan and Ohio State, and then all the way out west in Oregon, and then, of course, the local program, Missouri. In general, knowing that, of course, that the composite rankings are not always the most accurate. There's a lot of busts on those 5-star lists. I want as many 5 stars as possible. Because if you're a 5-star recruit knows who's pushing hard for you, that means that they also think you're good. It's Ohio State, after all. Getting the number 1 rated recruit is always a nice feather in your cap. Getting a top player from a state that isn't your own is also a nice feather in your cap. I do wonder, and we'll go more in depth on him here in a little bit at the end of today's show, how the new offensive line coach impacts things. But if you're the Buckeyes, you're going to be like, yeah, man, look, we're going to have Josh Simmons be a first-round pick. He played half the year at left tackle. Our other left tackle, who's a guard, Donovan Jackson, probably going to be a top 50 pick. We just won a national championship. We have the best facilities. You can get a great NIL deal. It's a really good selling point for the Buckeyes in the end. Now, their 2025 class was a little bit light on the offensive line. Although, to be fair, if you bring in, let's just say it's 3 every 4 years, we'll round it to that point, that's still 12 offensive linemen, but it was 1 tackle, Carter Lowe, a 4-star, number 60 overall, a couple different lower-rated 4 and 3 stars on the interior of the offensive line as well. So adding a big-time offensive tackle prospect, it's always a win, and maybe you can even sell him on an earlier path to playing time. So let's get some predictions in here. You can be optimistic if you want. Will Ohio State land Jackson Cantwell? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know in the pinned comments of today's show. The ad comes here on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there and go vote. Let's talk Ethan Booby Feaster. First up, I am a sucker for anyone with the nickname Booby. I still think Booby Gibson was a great basketball player. OSU's been an offer to Feaster, who is going to reclassify to the class of 2026. As you can tell, he's from DeSoto, Texas. The early updated rankings, and sometimes he's even jump up higher post reclassification. Number 23 overall in the class of 2026. He is a number 4 ranked wide receiver, and number 3 ranked player from the state of Texas. In some ways, Feaster is kind of the outlier here of some of the top teams he is interested in his upcoming recruiting cycle. Ohio State, all the way up north. Texas A&M, Texas, and LSU, and even Alabama are pretty nearby. Oregon, also a kind of notable program in there, but it seems like Oregon's in the mix for a lot of guys and maybe don't always end up landing them. Now, if you were to get Ethan Feaster, boy, you've got a really intriguing offensive group for 2026. Now, Jacob Witherspoon's probably going to be a corner, but Jaden Ricketts is a 3-star receiver who I bet will finish top 300 when the next round of updated rankings comes out. And, of course, there's Chris Henry Jr., the 5-star, number 1 ranked overall receiver. That presence of Chris Henry Jr. could potentially be a negative for Feaster. Even though he is reclassifying, there's a chance he's never the one for OSU because of how high the expectations are for Chris Henry Jr. Now, coming up next, we'll break down what Feaster had to say on Ohio State and the reclassification and some more positive reasons why he should strongly consider still joining the Buckeyes. Least of which is they just won a national championship, right? You can get the Ohio State National Championship gear over at chatsports.com/OSU champs. We'll put that link in the comment section and the description for you. There's also a clickable link, tagged product for you guys on today's show as well. Hoodies, hats, t-shirts, and everything else in between. Get the gear today, chatsports.com/OSU champs. From Feaster, that's what he said. All the colleges I have interest in, I told about my reclassification. All of them said they wanted me to do it. The only one that was hesitant about it was Ohio State, and that's because Coach Brian Hartline is the type of guy who wants the best for you. He felt like the best way for me to get to the league was to stay in 2027. But I feel like I'm making the right decision, so I'm sticking with my decision. One thing I love about Coach Hartline is that he's real. He's a real coach. He's going to be 100 with you at all times. I appreciate that. That's the type of coach I grew up with around my whole life, so I feel like he'll be a great fit for me. And that could be a pivot point in the end of, I would bet, based on that comment from Feaster, I bet he redshirts his first year, which, again, you're reclassifying. You're not, in general, I'll go back to the reclassification stuff here in a second. Ohio State is wide receiver U under Brian Hartline. All they do is produce elite players and our first-round picks. They're going to have one this year in Emeka Ibuka, who was never the number one at his school. That's insane to actually think about. If I were a top recruit and I played receiver, OSU would be at the top of my list every single time. If I'm good enough, I'm going to have interest. I'm going to get the development, and I'm probably going to have NFL success. Now, I will say, and I guess I kind of subscribe more to Brian Hartline's theory here, reclassification guys do worry me a little bit. Not from like a emotional maturity standpoint, but oftentimes a physical maturity standpoint, and some of the emotional angle too. These guys are young. They're very young. This is a drastic change in their life. Especially you go from, you grew up in Texas, now you're playing in Ohio. Boys, it's cold up here right now. It's the parking lot here at the Ohio branch for Chat Sports has not had an emptiness. It's been filled with at least some level of snow for like a month and a half now. It's different up here. That's a real change. So I do think that's something all sides have to consider and make sure you support the kid if he comes here. Now, of note, the Buckeyes are pretty far behind in the recruiting rankings. It's February. That's going to change very soon. Oregon, Texas A&M, USC, Penn State, Kansas, literally just because of volumes, number 5. The Buckeyes are 20th with only 4 recruits. When we get to early National Center Day, next year in December, they'll probably be top 5, if not top 3 or 2 or number 1 again. Where do you think the Buckeyes 2026 recruiting class will end up finishing? Let me know in the comment section of today's show what rank you think they finish with. Some more official news here. Ohio State has officially announced all of their new coaching staff hires and promotions, which means the contracts are at least agreed to. As we've learned over the years, sometimes they don't get signed for a while because there's the boards that have to approve stuff. So obviously, Brian Hartline is the new offensive coordinator. He's got the wide receivers coach title in there. Matt Patricia is the new defensive coordinator as well. Co-DC and the secondary coach is also Tim Walton. Hartline's a promotion. Walton's a promotion. Patricia comes in from the NFL. Keenan Bailey is also getting the co-offensive coordinator title. But again, Patricia and Hartline are going to call the plays on defense and offense respectively. The passing game coordinator / safeties coach is going to be Matt Carreri, so another bump in title for him. And then an outside hire is Tyler Bowen, who was the Virginia Tech offensive coordinator and is now the run game coordinator and offensive line coach. Now, to some extent, I think Bowen's kind of pulling the old parachute out, sees writing on the wall up there with Virginia Tech and says, I'm going to take this job. But you're pulling a sitting Power 5 OC to come be your offensive line coach and run game coordinator? I don't see how that's not a big-time win for the Buckeyes. And then Billy Fessler, also promoted to the quarterback's coach. A couple different analysts coming in there as well, but I wanted to focus on the big additions, the big official titles, and not just analyst role. We will have more coverage for you on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Again, Combine coming up next week. We'll have updates for you guys from Indy. Hit that sub button if you haven't already, youtube.com/GoBucks.